Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. The government is nearly completing its 90 days in a few days. We'll be talking about its performance. We'll be talking about all the hopes that were attached with this government as it came in. We'll be talking about the progress it has made in this time and where the direction it is setting for this government to the following, which it will follow in the future. We'll also be talking about the opposition and the government, both in the Senate and the National Assembly, their performance, the fact that there now seems to be the need of a code of conduct in the National Assembly, that also. The recent events in the Senate, we'll be talking about that also. We'll also be talking about the upcoming Malaysian visit of the Prime Minister. We'll be talking about all of that. I have with me Imtiaz, Hussain, Warriach, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Irfan, Ghauri, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. And Nasir, Jaffary, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us today. Imtiaz, like I said, it's going to be the first 90 days. A lot was said about these 90 days. Like I said, there have been a lot of hopes associated with this government. It came up, with the mantra of change, of tabdili, of Naya Pakistan. All of those things were said. Granted, that I don't think there are two opinions of the fact that there is sincerity behind all of these claims. But where are we headed? Are we making the kind of progress that the nation wanted to see? What do you think?
Thank you very much for discussing this important issue and invited me. Yes, sincerity of leadership, Mr. Imran Khan, there is no question, I guess. And he is trying to create an example as well on his personality and demonstrating that. Like he has surrendered, you see the watch he received from Saudi Arabia as gift, and he has surrendered to the treasury of Pakistan. So similarly, he is not getting protocol and these type of things, and also trying to emphasize on his team members to be simple in their daily routine.
Certainly, austerity is also a main part of this.
But 100 days is very less, you see, and I guess that they should not have asked to give something in 100 days.
Do you think that there is a direction, there is a vision that has been set in this time? Granted, it's still a very small span of time, which is what you're saying.
I'm optimistic because you see, they have completed their homework. They made and formed the committees of experts and on different areas, and they have completed, I guess, their work. And I just watched a news item in the channels that on 29th of November, Mr. Imran Khan is going to announce and maybe he will address to the nation and give his, you see, performance and
evaluation of
that what they have done and what they are going to do, and maybe he will announce some important, you see, his plans and policies
for the future.
Yes,
let me come back to you. Irfan sir, do you agree? Do you think that a direction has been set regardless of the intentions behind it? Certainly, Imtiaz sahab also mentioned austerity, and that has been a huge part of the speeches of the Prime Minister from the very first speech that he made, and following on the ministers have categorically stated again and again that it's very important, and accountability is the second tier of that. How do you see it?
Thank you, Maru. I think when this 100 days agenda that was unveiled and announced, that was in, I think, May, before the elections.
Right.
So at that time, many things were promised, and some tall. It was the phase that was an electioneering phase, and when you are in electioneering phase, you have lots of things which you promise to the people. But when you come to power practically and you see the gravity of the situation, then you have to reassess. So far, what we have seen is many task force, they have been constituted. They are working on different subjects. But on concrete front, what we have seen so far is launching of the housing scheme, and what we are expecting in next few days, when on 29th, I guess, the Prime Minister is going to announce some initiatives on education, health, and poverty alleviation. So these we would have to wait what those initiatives are. Other than that, the main achievement so far was the on the economic front, the situation was really grave, and as firefighting mayor and as a temporary mayor, at least the balance of payment, that issue has been, for the time being, that has been resolved.
Right.
But for putting the economy on strong footing, you need to attract the investment. Exports should be increased, and all those, goals. And they are the long-term measures.
Right. Let me come back to Irfan Sahab. Nasir Sahab, do you think that, certainly to keep the ball rolling, for us to keep functioning as a country, the first thing that needed to be done was plug the huge hole that was created within our economy, and that this government has done. Whether it's a drastic measure, it's a only for the time or whatever, one has to give them that credit, no?
Maruk, I think the Prime Minister is making very sincere efforts to put the economy back on rails.
Right.
You see, the problem is that when your economy was in very bad health, and where your balance of payments position was very poor, so it was natural that the Prime Minister and his team had to spend most of their time to find out ways to basically put economy back on rails.
Right.
Visit to Saudi Arabia was a first step in that direction. Then Prime Minister went to China, and now he will be going to Malaysia also. In Saudi Arabia, he got a very good response from Saudi government, and they actually pledged $6 billion.
Right, the money, of course.
Yeah.
And like
So
I said, that was urgently needed.
That was urgently needed, but
right.
The problem is still, in my personal opinion, far from over.
Right.
You still need at least $9 to $10 billion to basically meet the gap and the shortfall that you still have. Your foreign exchange reserves should be around 13 to $15 billion. That is a safe
Nasir Sahab, do you
figure.
think that as far as the financial, as far as our economy is concerned, do you think the kind of vision that is needed to steer us, which is not possible in 90 days, perhaps not even in a year, it will need time. This government is following through that?
Yeah, basically this is what I have been saying all along, especially to all those who are criticizing Imran Khan for his quote-unquote alleged failure to deliver. 100 days are actually nothing for a government facing lots of problems, serious problems. They have to straighten your economy. They have to actually
but then on the
resolve
other hand,
problems
a timeline that was again given out by the this very government.
I agree with you, but your economy was in real shambles.
Right.
I'm telling you that.
Right.
And it required a lot of efforts to put it back on rails. And the first thing that you have to do is to improve your balance of payments position and your foreign exchange reserves. Only then you will be able to actually execute other development projects, or to meet other targets, especially your GDP and the targets set by this government. So economy is the first and foremost concern of this government, to improve this economy. That is the main point. And number two, there are problems on external fronts also, when we don't have good relations, cordial relations at the moment with the United States, although we have a history of checkered relationship with the United States. So we have to improve those ties. Situation in Afghanistan. Then, of course, certainly China is a friendly country, but you have to be constantly in touch with them to execute projects under CPAC.
Of course, there are multiple challenges on multiple fronts. No one is denying that. But Irfan Sahab, do you think that there is, as far as the economy is concerned, did the government when it came in, do you think that it anticipated the kind of huge mess that we were perhaps in? They were taken by surprise, you think?
Yeah, I think they were not ready. I mean, or they were not expecting that that this would be the situation of the economy.
Right.
And then, at the same time, at the international level, because your main import is the oil, and the oil prices, they increased.
Right.
And they, I think, went up to $90. So all this, they created more pressure.
And I guess it created a panic also.
Panic as well. So these things, but at the same time, today I was reading that some expert in Google, I mean, he's some South Asian affairs. He's, I mean, on the long term, he has put forward a very promising economy for Pakistan. I mean, especially because of our geostrategic position plus the population size and all that,
right.
if we can utilize that in our benefit. So it depends that how we utilize that. For that, we need a long-term strategy. I agree that 100 days is not that is a very strict yardstick to judge the performance, and we would have to see. I mean, in the next course of time, and many of the things, they are, I mean, they are linked with your economy, and unless
right.
you have your economy on the strong
footing. It was essential, like I said, that was an emergency measure.
But that was an emergency, and it's a temporary measure.
Right.
Unless we have, because for every reform, for every development, you
right.
need to you need money, and borrowing from, I mean, internally or from the external debt, that is not the solution. What we have been doing in the past
was self-sustainable
yes, that
economy,
is
which
important.
I guess, like I said, it's a long-term goal, not possible in 3 months, perhaps not in a year, 2 years. But the point is that is the direction set or not?
So for that, I think some task force that are working that are working on structural reforms.
Right.
We have to see the results, like task force on bureaucracy. I mean, reforms
right.
in bureaucracy, reforms in police structure, reforms in your local government system,
right.
Reforms, much needed reforms in your accountability system. So these task force, they are already working. They have been constituted. They are working. So we would have to wait and see what they come up with, because this is much needed that you have a strong system.
And the structural reform that you're talking about, under the guise of that, you were basically talking about reforming the entire system. If we talk about reforming our, judicial reform, or we talk about police reform, like you're saying, bureaucracy, all of that, it comes down to essentially reforming our whole system. Does it not, Imtiaz sir?
Yes, you are right. And actually, you see that reforming of, there is need of reforms, I guess. Like, first of all, on accountability part, we have 3 agencies. Right. Which are overlapping, I guess. Like NAB is doing accountability process,
yes,
mainly, and then FIA, they also have their anti-corruption wing, and they are also conducting, inquiries and investigations against corruption cases. Then have provincial anti-corruption establishments.
Right.
So they are and then 2 more, although they don't have a criminal, authority or criminal domain. CMIT, Chief Minister Inspection Team, then Prime Minister Inspection Team, PMI. So there are almost 5 type of agencies. They are working on the same, and they are overlapping. So there is dire need of complete restructuring of this process, especially relevant to
right.
Accountability. And I guess that no need of much agencies. Like in FIA, there are more. I have observed that they are more competent investigation.
Regardless of, you're right, there are lots of problems. There is a lot of overlapping in our institutions. There's reforms needed. I think across the board, everybody agrees with that. But we have not been able to undertake this reform on the kind of scale that we need and we want and we anticipate since Pakistan's inception. What makes you think that they will go through now?
No, actually, you see that there's always, you said, two type of approaches. One approach is when they are not in the government. The second approach when they are in the government.
Right.
So when they are not in the government, they think that they can do this by just moving a stick. They will reform and restructure the things,
right.
and they will easily handle and they will create good governance. But when they come into power, then they see the problems and difficulties they are facing. So I guess that the present regime, present government, especially PTI government, I'm not talking about, you see, in the Sindh they have different government. Their need of...
but we have one federal government.
We have one federal government, and then to improve provinces, right. PTI is, you see, ruling there.
Right.
And so there's need of teaming and right people for right job, I guess. And for reforms, especially those people who are already tested in the system since many years. If they are being tested again, I don't think that, I'm not much hopeful, right. that there will be some positive result.
Right.
So one thing, and the second thing is that we should give allowance to this government,
right,
because
right,
this
right.
is their first time they are in the government,
right.
and they are dealing with the opposition, which has, you see, which has experience of 3 times of government.
Right. We will come on. I mean, I want to discuss the opposition also. But moving on, Irfan Sahab, do you think that this government, you know, there is, considering all of, you know, like I said, there's a lot of baggage. The intentions are, of course, nobody's doubting that they have come in with the best of intentions. Accountability is a huge part of their, you know, their whole campaign before the elections, even after the elections. Like Imtiaz Sahab is saying, there's a difference between any party before it comes in power and after it actually takes the reins of the government. With the PTI, with this government, our Prime Minister at present, he has, by and large, you know, this government has stuck to what they said before the elections. We can't say that, you know, afterwards things have changed. Austerity was a huge part of their campaign. Accountability was a huge part of their campaign. And that has stayed a part of it even after coming into power. They've started work on it. What do you think? You know, how important is accountability, in your opinion, in the large scheme of things for this country?
Maruk, this is something which is much needed.
Right.
Especially the reforms in the accountability watchdogs,
right.
NAB. But those reforms and those actions should be seen as acceptable to the nation, to everybody. They should not be controversial. That we had been discussing since the Musharraf era. That NAB, it was at that time controversial. It was made controversial because of certain reasons.
Right.
Then when these political parties, the major 2 political parties at that time, Pakistan People's Party and PMLN, they had agreed and they had announced that they would come up with reforms in NAB, and they would come up with some accountability mechanism which is, I mean, much different and impartial and all that, but they didn't do so. People's Party, at that time there was a committee was formed, but right. That committee during their tenure, it kept on working and we didn't hear from them. And
but this government seems to be making headway.
Yes, and now even the Supreme Court a few days back, right. Even Supreme Court in a judgment, they have pointed out that there are some necessary reforms, or there are some necessary changes that have to be made in NAB.
Right.
And it is not only the NAB,
right.
the other institutions like FIA. In FIA, we know that.
Irfan Sahab, do you think that we will be able to bring back the money? Which is a large part of what this
Yes, it is. I think it's a very daunting task. It's not something which is very easy. And along with that, bringing money, we should continue with that effort. But at the same time, we should not create an unnecessary scare in the country that, you know, I mean, like what we have some government officials, they have been saying that these people, they have accounts abroad, or they have properties abroad. Having a property or having an account somewhere abroad doesn't make you that they all are
it doesn't necessarily mean that it's looted money.
Looted money.
Right.
But at the same time, those fake accounts and all those
Needs to
where
be
you are,
investigated,
where you have concrete evidences, where you can, where you are in a position to prosecute on the basis of
and the kind
the
of
cogent
evidence
reasons
that can
you
then
have.
stand up in court also, which is
Yes.
another part
So,
of that.
so those investigation agencies, they should continue their work and publicly, when you create a situation that, I mean, these people, so many people I know, that they have businesses in Pakistan and they have businesses abroad, and those people, most of them, they have made wealth, or they have their businesses that are legitimate.
Right, but then they need to prove that also.
They need
That's
to prove
important.
that.
Let me
yes.
come back to you, Nasir Sahab. Do you think unnecessary scare is a word that Irfan Ghauri Sahab used, and I want to take that up. Do you think that there is an unnecessary scare, considering all that we've been hearing about banks also, about the fact that money is being used illegally from accounts, it's been taken here and there? Do you think there's an unnecessary scare, or do you think it's a very necessary one, and we needed it at this point?
I don't think. I will not agree with Irfan because scare is kind of a word which is very strong.
Right.
Basically, the level of accountability which should have been there is still not there.
Right.
Because we have been seeing in the past that the national wealth was ruthlessly plundered and shifted abroad, and that money should be brought back.
Right.
And the issue of these fake accounts and everything
needs to be investigated, of course.
Needs to be investigated, because so that a precedence at least is set for our coming generations, and kind of a punishment should be there for the people who have been plundering national wealth. It seems to be an uphill task now,
right,
as Irfan pointed out, to actually go to the different countries and ask them to actually work for return of that wealth. It requires a lot of judicial and legal process. We did it once, and we had advanced quite a lot in 2007 when NRO came, and Swiss government was asked to close
right,
those cases. So it really becomes quite, I would say, ridiculous that if you pursue certain cases and then you all of a sudden ask
right,
the concerned
right,
government to close down those
but
cases.
There has been categorical denial from the government that there is no possibility
yes,
of an NRO.
This is
they don't
what
have any legal way of giving out
my
such an
feeling is that
NRO.
this is what your people want to actually listen. This is what your this is the kind of guarantee that your people want from the government. Then this time this will not happen, that you will keep doing lip service.
So you
and
think
you
that that was a message to the public then, when it
yes,
was said that
actually people are quite satisfied over these commitments by the government, that they will actually certainly won't let these people go scot-free, and there will be no NRO.
Right, but the people also want to see some results at the same time.
Well, Marukh, as I said, there are a lot of judicial and legal requirements that,
right,
need to be done.
And for
before
those,
you,
I guess, right, and for those, then the other side of that is that we need reform for that.
You also need reform, and you also need commitment.
Right.
As far as the commitment factor is concerned,
There,
I think Imran Khan's government is committed to bring back this money.
Right.
As far as these reforms are concerned, Prime Minister will have to actually show some more devotion to the task to actually finalize these reforms as quickly as possible, so that efforts can be made to bring that plundered money back to the country.
Right. Imtiaz Sahab, Nasir Sahab seems quite hopeful. Are you as hopeful?
I guess that I'm not. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but this is a very lengthy process.
Right.
Because if we have certainly follow legal system, and first of all we have to try to convict people here, and we need a verdict from our courts, and then thereafter
proof.
we have to, then after that we have to go to those countries where that their wealth is lying. But at the same time, I have one suggestion, maybe that will work, because at this scenario, as Irfan has told, that people are feeling scared. I will not say scared, but a little bit you see there is apprehensive.
Right.
And but if there is a one time again, if there is announcement of some amnesty scheme, and giving an other opportunity to the people of Pakistan and the people who have their money which is not, you see, white money, and if they can bring back from overseas, so they should be given another amnesty scheme, and levy some type of, you see, small tax amount, and that may also help to increase.
But isn't that contradictory to accountability? If you give out another amnesty scheme, that's not giving the same message of accountability.
Actually, no. The suggestion which I am giving, actually, the background of that is that instead of waiting for long years to bring that money back,
so short-term goal.
Short-term goal, yes, of course.
But then you will be compromising.
And thereafter, you see what will happen. Thereafter, they will feel that if the deadline is crossed for that amnesty scheme, and they have seen the demonstration of investigation, which is very strong demonstration, and people, I guess that they will respond that amnesty, if that is introduced again. This is just to avoid wastage of time, and
then also to get the money more quickly, I guess.
More quickly. So this is a suggestion from my side.
Irfan sir, what do you think? Do you think it's sustainable? Don't you think it compromises the very integrity of, you know, and the principle behind accountability? If there's another amnesty scheme, you might get money, which is a short-term goal, but then you will be compromising on it.
Yes, Maruk. At this stage, I think it's not the stage where the government, they should announce some amnesty at this stage, because
perhaps it's too late now.
It is too early at this stage, because when you are not even sure. When I use the word scare, maybe that was a harsh word, but the thing is that we need the people to come and invest in our country.
Right.
And we have to build confidence of the business community and the investors from abroad, that we have a system in place now where your investment is safe, where there will not be any political victimization, where if you have any problem, that problem will be addressed. Your FBR system, even if you personally ask the FBR, I have personal experience that once I asked an FBR friend, I'm working in FBR, I said that some of my family members, they want to file their, they want to come into TaxNet. He said off the record, he said that, once they enter in that, they would be facing so much difficulties and better. It was discouraging because of the complications in that. Even if you file, your own returns, you cannot file your own returns. You need some expertise of tax lawyer or somebody. So it should be in that. So at this point of time, I think these investigation agencies, they continue their work. You continue the reform system at the same time, because your prosecution system is so weak that in white collar crimes, what happens is that even if those references, they are filed in the courts, they don't stand. And those cases, they continue lingering on for years and years and years, even though your NAB law says that they have to be decided in 30 days. But I don't see that since NAB was instituted, if there are, I don't know if there are any examples that those were decided. So
So you
for
need,
the time.
so you're saying that we need basically an environment which is calm, which is reassuring to the investor.
At the same time,
at the same time,
and strengthening
we
your
work on- right.
accountability system.
And at the same time,
of
we work on our reforms so that they get to such a level where we can actually take these measures.
Yes, once you have, I mean, the tangible evidence, you can negotiate, or you can, I mean, ask the people, okay, these are the evidences. Do you want to go to the courts, or do you want to have, I mean, pay the fine or whatever, the amnesty or whatever? But at this stage, I think it is too early to announce any
Right.
such
Nasir,
scheme.
moving on, let's talk about the government, its performance in both the National Assembly and the Senate. Considering the fact that they do face a daunting opposition if we look at the numbers. Of course, the way that the opposition has played, at times it has remained divided, which has helped the government. But overall, it's not easy. How do you see their performance within the two houses in these nearly 90 days?
Well, Maruf, I think during these 90 days, government has more or less been engaged in defending itself,
right.
Because the opposition this time is quite strong, and the government, it is for the first experience basically for the PTI to be in the government, and they don't actually understand the ins and outs and how to deal with such situations. Certainly when they will they will remain in power for another 4 years, and when they will come back in power after next elections, they will be in a position to handle such opposition. But at the moment, the opposition is quite strong, and so far I don't remember any significant legislation that might have been done by this house, because most of the time is consumed in the house on the issues of accountability, and from the government side on how to put your ailing economy back on track. So these are the main issues, and then certainly the opposition and government.
Let's not forget the heated exchange between the opposition.
That is, well, Maruf, that is, I basically I don't feel that thing alarming, because this is the beauty of democracy, that when there is an opposition, a strong opposition, and the government sitting together, there can always be exchange of hot words. But I saw on many occasions.
It's certainly not the beauty of democracy to have the kind of reprehensible language that has at times been used.
Well, there are exceptions, Maruf. Certainly, there are certain members, and both the sides to their utmost try to avoid such situations. For instance, I recently watched a speech delivered in the National Assembly by Bilawal. That was a very positive speech, and even members from the Treasury benches welcomed that.
Right. No one can deny that the role that he has played has been as a mature politician, and he's always had a very graceful way of addressing, a very parliamentary way of addressing. But that's he's not the only.
Well, this is, I mean, if there certainly there are some members, I would say, who have
now there's a code of conduct agreed
short
between
temper,
them. Right.
And so it's quite. I mean, this should be said that it is unfortunate that if they use any derogatory or abusive language.
You don't think it's really that big a deal as far as our, in a democracy, according to you?
No, but I don't think that is a big deal, because when such an incident happens, I have on many occasions in the past seen a member during the session or after the session going to his colleague and saying sorry for I mean that is part of democracy. I don't think and this is kind of something which should not actually stop this government from pursuing its agenda.
They should take it as part of the course and according to you.
Certainly.
Imtiaz, do you agree? Do you think it's part of democracy, and let this at times unfortunate events happen and just take it in stride and move on? That's one way of doing it. I mean, one can't deny that, but is it the right way?
No, I have little, you see, reservation on that.
Right.
You see that it's too early to ignite the things, and especially from government side.
Right.
As we have witnessed that many times, sometimes
Right.
from government side, you see statements were very aggressive statements and very offensive statements. That should be avoided, because now PTI is in government.
Right.
They should come in the government mode. They are not in the opposition.
They should perhaps be more forgiving, in your opinion.
Yeah. So at this stage, I just and you see that especially the opposition, they are trained people. They have in government 3 times each party, especially PMLN and People's Party,
Right.
and they have very experienced, you see, parliamentarians there, both in Senate and as well as in National Assembly. So if something will be, you see, some allegation will be leveled on that, because you see accountability process is going on, and one agency that is called NAB, that is
Right.
doing that. There is no
Right.
need to mention again and again on the floors that you are thieves and you are this type of thing, you have plundered the things, because that is matter now with the investigation agency.
But Imtiaz, if the other side questions the newly come in government, which hasn't been here for even 90 days, and asks them, well, you know, what about the economy? What about the foreign, as far as our foreign exchange is concerned, let's talk about your, the other affairs of the state. Let's talk about the police. Let's talk about the judiciary. The answer to that, then, is that, well, you've been in government for, so it's like an, on and off.
I guess the day when this government, this party came into the government, PTI,
Right.
now the days are of this government, you see. And instead of going
Forget
back,
about the past, you're saying.
yes, I guess we should focus towards future, and we should not have much expectation from the government in this short period. You see, this is only 3 months time. That is not big time.
Right.
And you see that previously People's Party totally, completed 5 years. PMLN completed 5
Irfan
years.
sir, do you think it's time to forget about the past, wipe the slate clean for this government, and to not look back at what all has happened for the past, so many years, as far as PPP and the PMLN is concerned? Which are the main parties who've been in power?
Maruk, going back to first to your previous question, that
Right.
yes, in Parliament, heated debates and exchange of harsh words, it
Common thing.
continues.
Right.
I've been covering Parliament since 2002,
Right.
so I've seen that in the past as well. But at the same time, the government always, they should be more conciliatory, because they
Right.
need to pass the legislations, they need to work on the committees, because these debates, they are good for maybe for most of the debates for catharsis, but on concrete terms, it is the legislation that
At
is
least, right.
your
Right.
that is your basic job. And
so this government
so
needs
far,
to move out of that answering mode,
yes,
reactionary mode,
yes.
and start, really just focusing on their governance, their deliverance, rather than answering the,
yes,
the
and at
opposition.
the same time, because when you have so many, task reforms, agendas, and all that with you, they all need legislation. Any, if your police reforms, your bureaucracy reforms, your FBR reforms, your tax system, your judicial system, everything, it has to be rooted through the Parliament and rooted through the both houses of Parliament. And in that, in National Assembly, you have very thin majority,
Right.
and in Senate, you are in minority. So you need the support of opposition. So a working relationship, that is very important. Similarly, in the committees, very few committees we have seen that they have started working, though 100 days are almost, you are completing 3 months now.
Right.
So they should have been functional. The issue of PSC, the most important committee, that is the chairman of PSC, that has to be resolved yet. So
Right.
these are the issues that the government, I mean, they have to, I mean, sit with the opposition. Okay, I mean, these harsh words and all that, they continue, not in Pakistan, but in other, I mean, democracies, they continue. But at the same time, the task that
the focus should be on governance,
yes,
on, you know, on legislation as far as the houses are concerned, on moving towards measures that are, you know, that can show the performance of the government.
Even when PTI was in opposition, at that time, I feel that as an opposition, what they were doing outside the parliament, they were, I mean, not that active inside the parliament. They could have come up with many, I mean,
but now they're the government, so
now they are in government, and now it is time now to deliver, and it is time now to come up with something which is concrete, which is part of your agenda, which is part of your manifesto. So for that, parliament is the forum. And you have been chosen and you have been elected for that purpose, and this should be the prime focus.
But perhaps they also needed some time to find their feet, as it is, you know, of course, because it's the first time that they have come in as part of the government.
But they have to come out from the opposition mode, and they should now realize that they are in government now. They have more responsibility. Though every parliament, I mean, every parliamentarian, they have their own, I mean, responsibility in the parties, like you mentioned about Pakistan People's Party, PMLN, and all that. So far, we have seen that the opposition, since they have their differences, they had, I mean, issues within themselves, that has been benefiting to the government. But once, I mean, if a situation arises where they unite, it will be very difficult for the government to
Which
manage
hasn't happened
that.
so far.
That hasn't happened, but the possibility, you cannot rule out the possibilities, because in politics everything is possible. So you have to take into account all these things, and once, I mean, the time passes, and once the criticism starts coming, and at that time it will be difficult. Till now, most of the people, they give you a benefit that you are new in government, but at the same time you should be learning.
Right. Nasir sahab, your comments?
I think I agree with Irfan on most of the points that he raised. That since it's beauty of democracy, that members actually
leaving the disagreements
criticize
aside.
each other, but actually on certain issues, I believe there should be consensus. For instance, the committees are still not functioning. The committees should have started functioning, because the 3 months are almost over. And on the issue of PAC, it's my personal opinion that the both government and opposition are unnecessarily dragging their feet on this issue of the appointment of chairman. I still remember that in one of the programs with you in just recent past, I had said that why not a member, a credible and member with good understanding of economic and financial matters from independent benches. Why can't he become chairman of PAC? Let us stop debating this issue that the chairman should be from the opposition or from the PMLN. So this is one of the options available. But there are certain points which I think the government has been raising, and they are quite right.
They need to find common ground and resolve these issues. Certainly. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. Imtiaz Hussain Warriach sahab, thank you for being with us. Irfan Ghauri sahab, thank you for joining us. Nasir Jaffary sahab, thank you for being with us. As far as the country is concerned, as far as this government is concerned, certainly there's no doubt that there's sincerity behind their claims, but there are a lot of issues like we talked about, that where it needs to be agreement upon between the opposition, between the government, on the issue of governance, on the issue of committees, and I think we all agree that it's important to move forward so that can be seen, that kind of governance, those measures can be seen for the public, and we can actually see a direction set for the future, for the betterment of Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.